Hey, welcome back everyone. Rob here from Ram Studio Comics. So in today's video, I'm just going to do some scribbling, really. I'm just going to basically take some of these different pens that I like to use and make some different marks and talk about why I think that's a good idea, experimentation-wise and basically trying to figure out what pens you like and kind of the process I take. I just created a new class, by the way, and I'll make sure it's linked in the description box below. And I cover some traditional inking techniques, one of which is this thing, and then we even do some drapery just to cover some things. But then I thought, well, I should probably share something on the channel here and talk about, just some of the warm-up activities that I'll do. And, just different, I don't know if you want to call them exercises. I guess it could be that. But it's just something I just randomly do with any pen that I start working with. So I've got my go-to pens, which are going to be, things like the Microns. I like this one Zebra felt tip. I use a couple brush pens, one of which is a Tombow, and then also a Pentel brush pen. But they all have different things that I tend to use within my work. So for me, like when I grab one of these Microns, I'm typically going to render some cross-hatching, something like this, okay? And you can really do everything with one pen if you wanted to, but I really don't use them that way. In fact, whenever I'm sitting here just kind of doodling and making marks, by the way, this is the 03, I just do a couple things. I try to focus on what I can generate line-wise, in control and size. Okay, so I'm looking at the size of these lines, thinking about, okay, what kind of control do I have at this size for this type of line making? The reason why it's so important is like you're going to draw these different panels, right? You're not always working on pinups where you're doing these big open areas, and you got to see what you can attain in a specific area, a smaller area or a larger area. So you're basically just kind of studying that, and then you're trying to create different patterns, maybe the same thing, like these are the same, but this has a slight curve. And then I might go over here and say, okay, well, what can I get if I do a downward pull and then I kind of stagger the line a little bit. Let me check my screen here, make sure I'm not in the way of, and my hand always gets in the way, especially when I'm using a more shorter pen anyways. My hand gets right over the top of it, just the way that I tend to draw. And I don't want to move the camera because then it distorts it, but you guys can tell me what you think of that. Is my hand in the way? Is that annoying? But yeah, so like just kind of staggering or stuttering the line a little bit, that can be great for certain effects, right? And it's easy to do. It would be easier, right? Because you're basically emulating like you have an unsteady hand in a sense. And you want that. You want that variation, I think. I think it's really important to play around with all the different variables you can to get a nice variety. So that's what I would generate with a Micron, those types of lines. Okay, so anything that's a bit cleaner, I'm going to go for that. Now something that's a little bit more loose, but not a ton, it's still pretty clean, pretty tight, is this Tombow Funosuke. I don't know what that says, but you could see it there hopefully. And I'll make sure to list these in the description box below for you. But what's nice about this one is it's easier to get a bigger tapered line. So a nicer, larger thick to thin, and there's still a lot of control here. I really like these brush pens right here. This and the Zebra one I'll show you in a minute, but I think I might like this one better, to tell you the truth. But again, this is a little bit subjective to whatever size you're working at. So things I like to practice are how close I can get the lines together and control that. So I'm paying attention to that as I do this. How much I can control a tapered line and get to a nice point. So there's some of them I can get a nice heavy start to it really easily, right? But then if I can't get the point I want, then I might have to come back with a different pen to do that. And so, it's not out of the realm of possibilities or whatever, but I like when I can get all my rendering out with that one pen, at least a specific type of rendering. And that's what I'd be doing here. Another thing is you want to practice also bringing these together in different ways. Okay, so one way is you can just add this thicker little piece to the back. It almost creates another pattern, right? These are all in my mind, these are all just patterns that you're creating. Yeah, see, I don't like that, but I need to at least test it to see if I like it, and I might even try another little pattern like this. I do all sorts of weird little things when I'm inking my artwork because those patterns are neat. They introduce another level of detail to the work. So one way to think of it is just gradients, right? So for instance, let me go back to, let me see if this O1, I got to be careful because sometimes these O1s dry out and I got them sitting by my work area and I need to just toss them and go on to the next one. I buy these suckers by the box because of this. No, this one's good. Okay. But yeah, so basically you want to think about the different gradients you can create with these, okay? This is a perfect example because you can generate these nice little lines in succession. Let me do it up here actually. So I'll create these very tight little lines. Probably could have went tighter than that, but. And see, that's not even a gradient. I'm sorry. That's just a tone. That's like it almost reminds me of like zip-a-tone or something, you know, but it's just a tone. And then when you go in the other direction, let's say maybe you go like this. All right, there's another tone. And you could go diagonally. And there's another one. So this is kind of a real clean way to get that gradation, you know, 1, 2, 3, you know. So that's one way to do it. There's lots of ways to do it. But this is something that I like to use this in comparison or in contrast, I should say, to these other effects. The more the better, you know, to me. I feel like if you got a lot of these different things going on for background effects and for textures, you can tell a better story. You can really control your focal points really well. You can just make things look more interesting. You know, if you have this really neat style of rendering, but you do it everywhere, it loses its luster. It becomes almost boring. This is another one I like to use for backgrounds. This is kind of just something you'll see. It's pretty popular, right? I'm sure you've seen this effect, but it's easy to do. You just basically go around in different angles. All I'm doing, I might pick no lines going this way. I might go this way. It's pretty simple. It's actually kind of peaceful too. Something about this part right here. I could really zone out and just do this. It's almost like meditation or something, but I'm sure all art should be thought of as meditation, but for me it's not. Some parts of it are actually kind of stressful, but it's all worth it. It's all awesome in the end. But see that? Just another little, you know, quick, easy texture. You can go back and play with this as well. You could thicken up some of the lines here and there. I like to just leave it like that, to tell you the truth. Now, another one that I like, or another thing I think you should practice when doing this, is to block in an area. Let's say something like this. I'm going to use this N15, I believe it is. Tombow. Somebody tell me how that's pronounced. Type it in the box below. Type it how it sounds. Okay, so something like this. All right, just it doesn't have to be pretty, whatever. We're just blocking in some shadow. And then practice rendering out from there. Okay, so I'll take this. Actually, let's take the zebra one. So that's this one, I believe. Yep, right there. You see that? My lighting's bad in here. Zebra. I don't know. What's the numbers on this thing? Yeah, I got my lights set up funny. Sorry, folks. Again, I'll link it in the description box below. But now try to take the bulk of the shadow and render it out. And when doing this, I think it's important to try to blend it in a way where you don't see the initial, oh, it's hard to explain. You don't see the initial rectangle in between these. So if I don't want to do it because I'll mess up the effect. You want to make sure that the taper goes so thick that it turns into a point in the negative. See the white? It's basically a point. So I think it's really important to practice. I see a lot of people render and it looks pretty good, but then they leave these big gaps in between their lines kind of everywhere, okay? And in some areas it's okay to do that. Like I'm saying about contrast and comparison, there's definitely areas you do want to do that. That's okay. It's not like there's a right or wrong way to do this stuff, but you can get a really nice gradient or a really nice transition if you focus on bringing these together a little more. To me, that's what this is supposed to do. Your lines are supposed to soften up the edge of the shadow and blend. Some of it, anyway, some of it should be, not all of it. You know what I'll do it by comparison. So up here we've got this tighter, and I can go back in and keep making sure that all these negative white little areas turn into points. You know, that's the kind of taper I'm looking for. But say I do the same type of line, exact same line, but I space it out. It's just a different look. Okay, and I'll space it out further as I go this way. And this is really what I'm talking about right here. So to me, this isn't really what I would want to see in my work, this portion. It just has a totally different look than what we see up here. This to me looks like more of a transition. And then if I do, I almost don't need to crosshatch this, but say I did, I also like to mix up the way that I crosshatch with another pen. So I could take the 01, I can go this way with it. And I think it's nice to have that variety, that variation in the lines. I feel like they don't, I feel like it reads better when you make sure to use a different thickness of line there. That might just be me, but again, I like to use all these pens together. Now let's see, another way we could do this is we could try to crosshatch now at a slight angle like this. You'll see this effect a lot. Yeah, I don't like that. No, I'm not digging it. But yeah, again, I would blend all that to where the gaps aren't so significant. Let's just try some tighter line work like this. Yeah, but the main thing is just experimenting a lot. Like even right here, let's just do some stippling. Another one that's real important to practice. And I will sit here and just doodle all day long. I'm a doodler, folks. That's what I do. I doodle. But that's how you're going to find your effects. You know, you're going to sit here and mess around with these different pens. Oh yeah, let me show you one I like. So this is a Pentel brush pen. And what I like about these, it's got a good quality for the tip of the brush. And you can just kind of make some neat little textures with this. Isn't that cool looking? Now what's going to happen generally is you're going to need better hand control, I think, to work with this one. It's great for fills. This and that N15 I showed you. Great for fills. Really speeds up that part of the process. But you can get all sorts of neat little textures with just, you know, the very tip of it like that. It's also really nice for energy effects. So I'm just going to, you know, kind of move that brush tip back and forth and almost think like a perspective line, you know, the direction anyways, continuity that way, and space it out. Do some more over here, maybe some smaller ones by comparison. And hopefully you can see you can get a really neat kind of energy to that. And really quick. That's one of my favorite things about a brush pen. The speed is just hard to beat. Yeah, it's kind of addicting. I just want to sit here and fill up the whole page with this effect. But yeah, it's fun to do. And you just keep building on it too. Yeah, another thing I want to stress is that don't be afraid to mess up. Of course you're going to mess up. And that's when you're going to bust out your whiteout and you're going to fix things and you're going to figure things out and you're going to make it sometimes better. You know, great whiteout is this Presto stuff. The reason why I like this stuff the most, oh sorry, I shook that right by the mic, that was probably offensive. The reason why I like this stuff the most is because it's very opaque. So you can really glob it down and it's solid. And then it's workable. You can go back through and ink over this and make it look just like you're inking over Bristol board. So yeah. Big fan of this stuff. I wish it was a finer point, but it seems like the trade-off is when you have a finer point that you basically don't get the opaqueness that you need. So let me see. Let me go back to the Tombow fine point, the Fudensuka that I can't say. And so I did these other lines right here, and that's another one that I think is a good idea to practice. So, this is more of a clean with a slight curve, but then I'm trying to bring those to more of a point. So I'm going to practice that some more over here. And I just wanted to explain too, like I think a lot of people wonder, about the hand mechanics, right? So what I'm doing is I'm really placing the weight on my the heel of my hand is just planted, right? That's how I get the control, and then I'm just rotating off that pivot point. Now that works for smaller, tighter areas, and I generally can get pretty good control. But it also hinders me from doing longer sweeping passes. So for instance, again, this is more detail work. This is something in a tighter area that I'm going to do this in, because I'm not going to have the kind of control I would need to go across the page. Now I can try that. I should try that, or I should practice. So say I needed a line to go from this point to this point. It's a lot bigger area. That I'm going to have to pull a lot longer stroke, right? So what I have to do there is kind of create the line over a series of strokes, okay? At least the way that I would do it, the way that I found for it to work for me. And then I would beef up the weight back here. I would have that initial line that almost becomes a sort of ruler for me, and then I would do that again. And I can tell you right now that the amount of effort that I'm having to put into that line makes me not want to use this pen. So again, this is where testing these tools are going to tell you what they're good for. For me, that's too much work for that line. It's kind of weird. I thought it would come out better. Now I'm going to try the zebra one again, see if that's any different. Could be, because sometimes it's just the pen's drying up a little bit, but now it's really just that this is more of a detail brush and pen. So I'm going to try the Pentel brush pen. Now I know right off the bat I'm not going to have the amount of control that I'm used to with a felt tip, but it's easier to get that ink down. And it might just mean that I need to dedicate more time to using this brush pen. But again, I'm probably not going to get the same control I'm after, but speed is a big factor as well. And I think it still looks good. It's just not, I see a couple little bumps where I didn't mean for them to be. I might even have to go back with a little bit of whiteout and try a different effect with this. But if I need a gradient, if I need some cross hatching in this big of an area, then I need what I need, right? I'm going to have to go for it. And I think that really I just need to spend more time using a brush. When I did the Aero and Assault comics back in the day, I inked it all with the brush pens. I can't even find those brush pens that I used to get. They were awesome. I got them from like a, what do you call it? Architecture design studio, or, the supplies for architecture. Drafting supplies, I guess. Drafting company, I don't know. But anyways, they were great. They were local. I was able to find them, and I realized I could get a good line with them. I'll tell you the truth. That's actually why I picked up this one. I thought it looked just like this, and a lot, pretty close. So I thought that's what this one was, the Tombow, but it's not. Like I said, I couldn't find them. But what I'm getting at is that's one of the ones I first started to feel really comfortable with. Was using a brush pen from that supplier. All right, so at any rate, we'll bring this one to a close. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I'd love to know what you think, and more content on the way. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.